What is up, everybody, and welcome back to Crypto Pulse. So, the market is an absolute sea of red right now. Everyone's panicking, headlines are screaming about a trade war, and it feels like the sky is falling. But what if I told you that all this chaos, all this fear, is actually the exact fuel needed for the next massive crypto bull run? Sounds crazy, right? Well, today we're going to dig into the data, connect some dots, and uncover a fascinating story that most people are completely missing. And hey, if you like having your mind blown by counterintuitive crypto takes, do me a favor and gently tap that like button. It helps the channel out a ton. Now let's get into it. So here's our game plan. First, we're going to look at the trade war fears that are causing all this panic. Then we'll zoom out and see how this is creating massive ripples in the global economy. Next, and this is the crucial part, we'll see how all that pressure is forcing the Federal Reserve to make a big move. After that, we dive deep into Bitcoin itself, why the charts look surprisingly bullish, we'll follow the smart money to see what the whales are doing, and finally, we'll put it all together into one clear narrative. All right, let's start at the beginning. We need to talk about the spark that lit this whole fire, the escalating trade war and the wave of fear that it immediately sent crashing through the crypto markets. Now, on the surface, this all seems pretty straightforward, right? A trade war creates uncertainty, investors get spooked, they sell off their risky assets like crypto, and boom, prices tank. But is that really the whole story? Or is there something much more powerful happening just beneath the surface? I think you know my answer. And this right here, this was the moment it all became real. This one quote made it official and sent a shockwave of pure, unadulterated panic through every financial market on the planet. The market's worst fears were confirmed. And you can literally see that panic in the numbers. The Crypto Fear and Greed Index, which basically measures market sentiment, absolutely nosedived to a score of 34. That is deep, deep in fear territory. Now, this tells us that the average retail investor is terrified. They're selling, they're running for the exits. But as any seasoned trader knows, when there's extreme fear in the streets, that can be a massive buying signal. Okay, so let's zoom out for a second. This trade war isn't just a crypto problem, it's a global problem. And it's sending shockwaves across the entire financial system, creating some really interesting and frankly predictable ripple effects that we need to pay attention to. So what happens when there's this much uncertainty in the air? Well, money does what anyone would do if they heard a scary noise in the dark. It runs for cover. Capital flees from things perceived as risky, like crypto and tech stocks, and it sprints towards assets that are considered safe. It's a classic risk-off move. And you want to see proof? Just look at what's happening with gold. Its monthly RSI, which is just a fancy way of measuring market momentum, has shot up to 92.2. To put that in perspective, that is the most overbought gold has ever been. It's a flashing neon sign that scared money is piling into this traditional safe haven. And here's another huge signal, this one from the bond market. The yield on the 2-year Treasury note just hit a 3-year low. Now, why on earth should you care about that? Because a falling yield means that big money investors are placing massive bets that the Federal Reserve is about to ride in on a white horse and start cutting interest rates to save the economy. And that, my friends, brings us to the absolute core of this whole argument. All this fear, all this economic pressure from the trade war is basically forcing the Fed's hand. And the move they're about to make could be the secret, unexpected catalyst that lights a rocket under the crypto market. This move has a name. It's called a dovish pivot. Just think of it like this. When the economy is getting too hot, the Fed goes into hawk mode, raising interest rates to cool things down. But when the economy is struggling, like right now, they switch to dove mode, cutting rates to try and stimulate growth. The trade war is forcing them to become doves. So here's where it all connects back to us, to crypto. Lower interest rates mean it's cheaper to borrow money. You get this flood of cheap capital into the system. And when money is cheap, investors and big institutions get a lot braver. They're way more willing to take on risk and speculate on assets with massive growth potential, assets that look a heck of a lot like Bitcoin. Okay, so the big picture macro stage is being set perfectly for a risk-on rally. But what about Bitcoin itself? What is its own market structure telling us? Well, when you look at the on-chain data, you realize that despite all the scary headlines, the underlying fundamentals for Bitcoin look incredibly strong right now. Let's just do a quick comparison. Think back to the 2023 market peak. That was a classic blow-off top. We had extreme greed, euphoria everywhere, your grandma was asking you about dog coins, and it was followed by a massive dump. Now, look at today. This has been a slow, steady grind upwards. There's no euphoria. In fact, there's a ton of skepticism. And you have to remember this key principle. Bull markets do not end in fear. They end in absolute, off-the-charts greed, and we are nowhere close to that yet. All right, now for my favorite part, let's ignore the noise, let's forget the headlines, forget what the panicked sellers are doing, let's follow the smart money. We're going to look directly on the blockchain because the on-chain data doesn't lie. It shows us exactly what the biggest and most informed players are doing with their capital. First up, look at this. This chart shows us the amount of money just sitting in stablecoins like Tether and USDC. We're talking billions and billions of dollars. Now, this isn't money that's left crypto for good. No. This is dry powder. This is cash on the sidelines, a coiled spring just waiting for the right moment to get deployed back into assets like Bitcoin. And now for what might be the single most bullish chart in this whole presentation. While retail investors are selling in a panic, the Bitcoin whales, these are the huge wallets holding thousands of BTC, are doing the exact opposite. They are buying. They took a little profit at the top, like you'd expect, but since then, they have added over 318,000 more Bitcoin this year. Let me say that again. 318,000 Bitcoin. They are aggressively buying this dip. And if you're wondering if this is significant, let me put it into perspective for you. The level of whale buying we're seeing right now is incredibly similar to the pattern we saw back in late 2024. And what happened right after that? The market went on an absolutely explosive rally. Now, history doesn't repeat, but it sure does rhyme. Phew. Okay, we have covered a ton of ground here, from global trade wars to nerdy economic indicators to deep on-chain analysis. So now let's put all the pieces of this puzzle together one last time and recap this powerful, counterintuitive story. Here it is, the whole thesis in 4 simple steps. Step 1, the trade war sparks massive fear in the market. Step 2, that fear puts huge pressure on the global economy. Step 3, this pressure forces the Federal Reserve to pivot and start cutting interest rates. And finally, step 4, those lower rates create a wave of cheap money that comes flooding back into high-growth, risk-on assets like Bitcoin, fueling the next epic pump. It's a beautiful, counterintuitive chain reaction. So we're left with this incredible tug of war. On one side, you have all the on-chain data, the smart money, and the macro setup screaming that the bull run is still very much alive. But on the other side, you have the wild card of global politics. So the big question is, will the bullish data win out in the end? Or will the unpredictable nature of geopolitics get the final say? It's going to be fascinating to watch unfold. What do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments.